Then he said to me, "Stay back a minute, David. I want to talk to you." And he turned to me and he said, "Listen, if you want to be successful, you're going to have to figure out how to get along with everyone. And that includes difficult people. Some people will be looking for a fight.
Compensation is the sticking point. Writers want more of it, especially from streaming projects. The union says writers on streaming shows are getting less for the same work and doing less of it. Streaming shows have fewer episodes and writers work fewer months.
We have the truth on our side, we have justice on our side, and we will fight as long as it takes.
The streamers have been very protective of their data, so we have no idea how well shows are doing. We have to take their word for it.
Think about what TV and film on the internet looks like now. Try to hold it all in your head, from House of Cards to Hacks and everything in between. Every Stranger Things and Lord of the Rings.
All right, time out. That's it, time out.
Every Dear White People, I am not okay with this, love Victor. Each Witcher, Watcher, Wednesday, Willow, and WandaVision, every Handmaid, Mandalorian, and...
Where's the override? The override!
Nerdrotic.com.
I think it's time that Hollywood up in here tonight. Come on and get your hands up so I can see them.
Say you're working in a leisure or luxury-based industry, one that is 100% reliant on the general public's disposable income. An industry in the past that has made mountains of money entertaining people all around the world. Then I want you to imagine, dear viewer, said industry reaching maturity, getting a little old, getting a little tired, getting a little bit too corporate, and then all the people working within that industry through their ignorance and arrogance driving off half the paying customers.
So even I get hate from Star Wars fans when I'm like, look, dog, you're just mad the franchise isn't aging with you.
You're no Star Wars fan in my mind.
You guys, I have a very bad feeling about this.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Ladies and gentlemen, all 754,000 of you out there and the 40% who haven't subscribed yet, I give you current year Hollywood, who is going through a major paradigm shift brought on from the last strike. So what do the workers do while their entire industry is in the midst of an apocalypse and during a time of, and no one can argue this, woke Hollywood fatigue? Of course they strike.
Experts say the ripple effects of the strike will mean pain for so many businesses. Entertainment attorney and journalist Jonathan Handel.
The economic impact of the strike 15 years ago was $200 million a day. We are probably seeing, with inflation, something more like $250 million a day.
What's frustrating is that we just came off of a great rebound from COVID year and momentum was moving forward. And then something that's completely out of our control like this happened.
It's been a long, strange journey to get here, particularly in the last few years. A lot of very hard work and dedication has gone into destroying a lot of the things we love and destroying the relationship between Hollywood and its audience. This was no accident. It was a perfect storm of greed, corruption, raging narcissism, arrogance, corporatism, and activism, all walking hand in hand while ignoring and taking for granted what they need: the paying customer. An industry that was deemed essential by the state over certain types of restaurants, salons, gyms, and countless other small businesses that were absolutely destroyed during COVID. Corporations resurrected or paid billions for franchises that they would eventually completely destroy. Star Trek killed. Star Wars is dead. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, which wasn't started by Disney, but they're sure going to end it. Promising shows like Westworld, Altered Carbon, The Umbrella Academy, The Witcher, and yes, even Game of Thrones were thrown down the intellectual meat grinder of modernity. Then, of course, there's the more recent not-so-promising shows like Santa Inc., She-Hulk, Velma, Witcher Blood Origin, The Wheel of Time, and The Rings of Power.
Get off my planet.
And that's just to name a few, and you know what they all have in common? You guessed it, they're all written by men and women from the Writers Guild of America. Now that the streaming bubble has burst, has Hollywood collectively seen the error of their ways? Now that the corporations have slowed down their spending, at least stopped spending it like President's crackhead son in China on creative talent and content for platforms that don't turn a profit. Maybe everyone in Tinseltown has finally realized that alienating the audience is a really bad idea, and maybe they have learned from the precious few successes they've had in the theaters that they had every intention of abandoning.
In just 3 weeks, Trolls World Tour made nearly $100 million in rentals. The results for Trolls World Tour have exceeded our expectations and demonstrated the viability of premium video on demand.
It made more money for Universal in 3 weeks at home than the original film did in its theatrical run. The major film studios had restructured to make streaming their primary focus. Warner Brothers released their entire 2021 slate in theaters and on HBO Max at the same time.
Perhaps this would even be a time of self-reflection after the massive layoffs, billions lost on streaming, and millions of subscribers lost on the streaming services.
Disney Plus losing more than 4 million subscribers in just the last few months.
I'm surprised by this, but not really.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm! Wait. Everybody calm down!
Hollywood is in full panic mode, and they will eat themselves because, again, this is a strike during the apocalypse. Both sides have their gripes. Some are legit, some are stupid. But if you think I'm being hyperbolic about this being a possible Hollywood apocalypse, well, I'm not the only one saying that. The IP era's venture capitalist philosophy has poisoned movies, and Jacob Aller here makes a lot of great points while still missing the giant 900-pound blue-haired activist in the room, as well as completely leaving out a party partially responsible for this giant disaster. But don't worry, we'll get to them. It's the corporation's turn. Among so many heinous problems trickling down on our heads from the top of the film industry is that of intellectual property, because it's the IP's fault. It's not that adaptations are new, but that the ability to make a living by creating anything else has only recently been destroyed. IP obsession has killed the mid-budget movie. It's killed the movie star, partially.
Get out of my chair. Get out of my life.
And it's coming for the rest of the industry. This is as much a problem for audiences as for filmmakers at any level. Well, the audience has been trying to tell you guys for quite some time. And it all comes from the same space: unchecked greed and the familiarity with which we accept it. You're about to hear some concerns that I have brought up and many others here on YouTube and many members of the audience. And it's very coincidental that now the WGA and the people who back them in the access media are bringing them up now. Tidy, consistent, sustainable profits, the kind of thing generated by movie studios that once offered a diverse slate of reasonably budget adult dramas, teen date rom-coms, family films, and fence-swinging art movies, are a thing of the past for those in charge of the industry. Other forces from the entertainment world are certainly at play, specifically the rise of prestige TV, which created this boom, by the way, which a lot of you made a lot of money, as a destination for what the movies have abandoned. Well, I don't recall any writer turning down a paycheck because Hollywood was abandoning movies. But the pivot to the IP era feels simple because it feels familiar. It's because tidy, consistent, sustainable profits aren't enough. There must be growth. There must be domination. There must be shared universes. This, my friends, is Hollywood coming to terms with the fact that they are simply a subsidiary of Silicon Valley. This attitude goes beyond being risk-averse, and I want you to remember that term, risk-averse. Risk aversion isn't new. Single-minded speculation, trying to alchemize IP into gold, is. The new robber barons of Hollywood are on a suicide run. It's a damn shame it was only bigots telling you this back in 2018. This shift is tech bro economics, Wall Street filleting, vulture capitalism, here to feast on the industry, not further it. Again, these weren't issues you heard from the access media very much or at all, but you did hear them here on YouTube. They all wanted to find the next Zuckerberg, but replace Zuckerberg with MCU and you can understand what happened to the movies. Sure, an executive could gamble a few $1 million on an idea from a, and they have it in quotes, writer, and that's one of the problems with Hollywood. There's too many, in quotes, writers. They could also flip the big old binder of properties to a random page, do a rail of coke. Okay, wait a minute. I long for the days Hollywood was doing a rail of coke instead of sniffing their own farts, and spend $100 million to reboot whatever's underneath. A new Ghostbusters? Another go at the dark universe? Let's do it! Monopolies, even monopolies built on unsustainable properties on the slums of a Baltic and Mediterranean avenues, have the potential of being more profitable. They can define decades of strategy. Investors like that. It feels stable, yet exciting, predictable, yet potentially limitless. Except it wasn't. I knew that. You knew that, Jacob Aller knows that, and a lot of the writers who took paychecks knew that. The corpos don't give a crap. None of them watch the intellectual properties they actually paid billions for. Okay, maybe somebody on the Disney board saw Star Wars once when they were a kid or accidentally at a hotel while they were banging a hooker. I guarantee you no one on the Paramount board has seen a single episode of Star Trek the original series. And I am positive Jennifer Salke at Amazon has never read Lord of the Rings.
Will you take care of me forever and ever?
And because they don't have a clue and they don't care, they often end up hiring the wrong people. This isn't rocket science. After taking a shot at J.K. Rowling because there isn't an Access Media author who isn't an activist, I have to give him points for pointing out this. Pretty consistently, folks go to the movies when they recognize something and stay at home when they don't. Looking at the past 10 years of box office top 10s, it's far faster to know which movies aren't based on pre-existing property. Frozen, Inside Out, Zootopia, The Secret Life of Pets, Sing, Onward, Gravity, Tenet. That's it. 8 movies out of 100, and 2 of them let you see a person. Wall Street loved the idea of streaming because Hollywood promised them something they really couldn't before: a very sustainable and predictable flow of profits, all based on intellectual properties with built-in audiences, and all Hollywood had to do was make them and watch the money roll in. Except there was a major problem with that. Earlier in the article, Jacob says, "We, the country's movie-going public, have already been trained to understand this." Not necessarily. For one, don't confuse train with actually working and making the world go around and being too busy to notice. Each of us had our own waking up point, and more people are waking up to this garbage every day. And that's the success model. Increasingly, it's the only model because now we crave it, beaten into submission by the sheer onslaught of, remember that, requels, legacy sequels, and reboots released since Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Star Trek, and Star Wars The Force Awakens helped establish the monoculture model of filmmaking. Audiences didn't do this to pop culture, something I've been saying for years. It was the corporate powers that invested in and encouraged their most ravenous demographic, turning audiences into fandoms. While I'll agree with Jacob that the marketing departments of these corporations have exploited, divided, and vilified fandoms, but they existed mostly harmoniously long before this current crop of corporate snakes came around. It would be something if those behind these exhausted series were given artistic freedom to subvert expectations. Well, Rian Johnson was with The Last Jedi and he killed Star Wars. Or play with these properties, and if somebody of talent did this, I'm sure they could pull it off, but POTs, people of talent, are in short supply right now in Hollywood. But another facet in how this trend manifests is in its pandering, simplistic, safe filmmaking aimed at siphoning the memories and wallets of arrested adults. Well, you had me until arrested adults. Even after he tried to defend the audience, it ends up being the fans' fault because the access media is going to access media. You know who didn't get mentioned? The writers who wrote this crap will tell their story through the access media. I bring you the mental gymnastics of CBR.com. The WGA strike is a fight against everything fandoms claim to hate. Some vocal fandoms aren't supporting the writers' strike, which is baffling because the writers are fighting against everything fans claim to hate. I am as curious as you as to how they came to that conclusion. In the public relations battlefield, the Writers Guild of America should have an easy edge over the Association of Motion Picture and Television Producers. Sure, because you're only hearing one side of the story, theirs. The 2023 WGA strike is about wages for writers, but it's also about fixing everything contentious fandoms claim to hate. Faced with the choice between David Zaslav in the DC universe, what fan would side with a guy who paid himself nearly 3 times the budget of the canceled Batgirl? Turns out a lot of fans were very happy about the canceling of Batgirl, which had nothing to do with the movie itself and everything to do with what came before. Brought to you by identity politics and bad writing, something the author of this article insinuates is a myth, while also admitting there is something deeply flawed with these giant franchises that the access media has supported, to this very day. Unfortunately, thanks to how profitable outrage is on YouTube and social media, I was waiting for that. Man, we got it in the second paragraph. Some are doing just that because everything from Star Wars to genre TV staples like The Flash and The CW prompt familiar cries from these disaffected viewers as quote unquote bad writing. Spoilers. It's all gonna be the paying customer's fault for just being too dumb or misinterpreting what the writers actually want to do. They need more time. We need more writers. It's not bad writing, it's the corporations. I'm saying it's both. And if, say, I was the author of this article, the last thing I would invoke after putting bad writing in quotes is the CW.
So you were saved by Batwoman. It's dope.
Yeah, I mean, it was fine.
Fine. It's about.
Yeah, but she's so cringe.
Thus, with the writers asking for fair pay, which everybody should get, better job security, well, being better at your job will give you security and other fundamental worker rights. Come on, you make it sound like you're going down to the salt mines. The bad writing chorus is on the side of the studios. You hear that, fellow paying customer and audience member? If you call out bad writing on things like the CW, a network that never turned a profit, you're on their side. Get ready for some whiplash here. Though these folks frequently blame studios, individual producers / executives like Star Wars Kathleen Kennedy, a person that CBR strongly supports. Putting aside whether the writing is bad, and it's certainly bad in this article, or rather some folks just don't like it, well, that number of some folks keeps growing every day because the writing is objectively bad.
We fell in love.
We fell in love. We did fall in love.
Could I perhaps hold the baby, please?
He doesn't take kindly to strangers.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
Then Jacob says fandoms should support the WGA strike. Why? Well, his list of reasons is basically repeating the WGA's demands. There's AI, which is essentially a battle between the writers and producers to see who controls it. There's fair pay and job security, but as Robert Meyer Burnett says, you get what you negotiate because it's not show friends, it's show business. One of their demands is transparency with the streaming numbers so they can get their residuals, and I'm completely on the WGA side for this one. For selfish reasons, show us the numbers, Hollywood. The problem is they won't because they're low, and the WGA might want to file this under don't ask questions you don't want to know the answers to. To be fair, for the few successes there are, the producers want to hide those numbers to not pay writers. Then there's the controversy of the mini room, which is basically a very long audition process for the writers that does end up screwing them over, but I would also say if you want to solve that problem, just don't go. Go out and make your own stuff. There's never been a better time to do that than right now. The WGA has countered the mini room with mandating how many writers can be on a show. The WGA also wants a minimum mandatory pay for its writers no matter how bad they are. Why not ask for 18-karat gold toilets and immortality while you're at it? And hey, if you get it, great. Back to the article. How the WGA strike could help make even cash grab shows and movies even better, and they show us a picture of the Rings of Power. We'll get to that in a second. Jacob from CBR states that employing more writers and giving them more time will only ensure fandoms get the level of quality and storytelling they want. I seem to recall Amazon giving the creators and writers of the Rings of Power 3 years and all the money in the world to make the biggest streaming flop of all time. I also seem to recall Jessica Gao and the writing room of She-Hulk having 3 years to create one of the worst shows of 2022.
And the fact that we were able to very accurately every single time predict exactly what the toxic reaction was going to be. Like, it's both sad, but also goes to show like how tired and unoriginal these guys are, you know?
You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say that's the bad guy. So, what'll I make you?
I don't think more writers have helped things like late night television, which had teams of people writing that garbage.
I was trying to think of a good joke because I'm not really
I don't want to say I'm not good at telling jokes, but I'm not, I make a living out of it, but
I need my writers. I need them real bad.
Leading to ratings and profit erosions, but the good news is all of these shows have been off the air since the beginning of the strike, and America is beginning to heal. So while some amateur critics make their names decrying the quote-unquote bad writing, which is the 4th time they mentioned it in this article, in their favorite franchises, they should still support the WGA strike, because if their complaints are made in good faith, then giving writers more time, more help, and more pay can correct that. Now, when it comes to the amateur critic or the YouTuber, this is something the producers, the writers, the access media, quite frankly, all of Hollywood, are scared to death of as much as AI. The one thing they cannot compete against, you and I.
If I were to ask you what is the deadliest animal on Earth, which animal kills the most humans per year? The answer is it's the mosquito, the disease-spreading mosquito. AI is the ultimate expression of a Silicon Valley ethic called optimization. It means maximum efficiency at minimum cost. Well, obviously the work won't be as good. The shows will all feel the same. Public will, of course, notice. Moviegoers and TV watchers will get bored, the poor product, and they'll stop watching. Instead, they'll amuse their boredoms with TikTok and YouTube, 2 other mosquitoes that we allowed to engorge on us. We're going to do what we always do. We're going to swat away the mosquitoes, and the business will win.
Well, gentlemen, when the shit hits the fan, some guys run and some guys stay.
Variety laments we used to treat movie stars like gods. Hollywood grapples with the loss of young star power. And the biggest factor in this, Variety doesn't even mention social media. No, social media did not kill the movie star. The movie star killed itself by going on social media, and then we got to know them. And the same goes for everyone else in Tinseltown. We remember Hollywood's collective act during the Summer of Love, with organizations like Bad Reboot saying enough white comfort. I seem to recall the vast majority of Hollywood supporting things like lockdowns. You know, the thing that they were allowed to work through when people like my wife were losing their business.
Screw your freedom.
And I also want to point out that these lockdowns greatly bolstered the corporations that the WGA is fighting right now. And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the unified SAG, who was strangely silent when their own people were refusing the jab. So yes, the corporations are largely to blame. It was their greed, their hubris, and their fear. The risk aversion from activism, diversity, inclusivity, and equity.
Shit!
That's led to things like soulless remakes where the only difference is a race or gender swapped character, or a completely vandalized beloved property, for example, an intersectional feminist Lord of the Rings. The inevitable fan backlash occurs, and then we get the gaslighting and fan baiting.
Long story short, there are hundreds of those. Hundreds.
This all comes from risk aversion, because better the fan be called a racist than the corporation, the writer, or the adult pretender. And now there's a writer's strike and potentially an actors and directors strike, which would shut the whole damn thing down during a Hollywood apocalypse. By all accounts, this strike could last as late as fall, maybe even Christmas. And there was a time where the audience could put pressure on the corporation to get a deal done, but we don't live in that time anymore. Hollywood, if you actually give a shit what your paying customer thinks, I think the key to winning a public relations argument is not pissing the public off.
Everybody knows you never go full retard.
Oh well, too late.
Now this has been standing here for centuries. The premier work of man, perhaps, in the whole Western world. And it's without a signature. Disposable. Of all things, this rich stone forest, this epic chant, this gaiety, this grand choiring shout of affirmation, which we choose when all our cities are dust, to stand intact, to mark where we have been, to testify to what we had it in us to accomplish. Our works in stone, in paint, in print, but everything must finally fall in war, or wear away into the ultimate and universal ash. The triumphs and the frauds, the treasures and the fakes, a fact of life. We're going to die. Be of good heart. Cry the dead artists out of the living past. Our songs will all be silenced. But what of it? Go on singing.
Nerdrotic.com.
If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.